Alright, so today we're starting a new series where I'll be having a look at all the games on older hardware on an older operating system, right? So today we have a i7-990X CPU that is paired with 24 gigabytes of DDR3 1333 megahertz RAM, and this is actually running in triple channel or tri-channel. And then we also have a GTX 580. I'm running Windows 7, and I do have a 500 gig SATA Gen 3 SSD. And the first game we're going to be having a look at is Space Marine. Alright, so here we have the first Space Marine, and if we have a look at our options here, there's not a lot you can choose from, right? Some of these games really have like 2 or 3 options. Now, currently we are at 768p, so 1366 by 768, the aspect ratio is pretty weird, but anyway, this was a pretty popular resolution back in 2011. Now I just want to point out that I'm going to be testing 2011 games with this system because the CPU is from 2011, the GPU is from 2010, late 2010, so we'll be testing a bunch of 2011 games, and then I'll also use the system for 2010 games. I'm also going to be testing more systems like the 2nd gen, 3rd gen, 4th gen, with also the period correct games and the period correct GPUs to pair with that. Alright, so as I was saying, there's really nothing much you can change here. These are the highest settings, right? Except for VSync is off. And let's get right into it. All right, so right off the bat, yeah, we're getting 220 frames per second. This is... I actually played a little bit of this game, and it's actually fantastic. I'm not sure why, but I do enjoy this a little bit more than Space Marines 2. I did not have that much fun with Space Marine 2. This is basically the start of the campaign. I did play for a few hours or so to get a little bit further, and I don't know, it's a pretty fun game. 250 frames per second, yeah, pretty flat frame time graph, although our 0.1% lows are maybe a little bit lower than what I want them to be, but it's a very, very good experience here. Now granted, we are running at 768p on a GTX 580, and that is to be expected. The CPU, I just want to point out that the CPU is actually a 6-core 12-thread, right? It's it's kind of a high-end desktop from that era, HEDT, because it's got tri-channel memory, 6-core 12 threads. It has SATA Gen 3, so 6 gigabits per second, and I mean, it's running pretty well, yeah. So 200 frames per second average, give or take, in the starting area. And I think it's time for us to start increasing the resolution, yeah. Alright, just want to kill these orcs, and then we'll move on to a high resolution. Alright, so back then, 768p, 1080p, like there were different variants of it, right? It wasn't... I have to go back to the main menu, change the settings. Like it wasn't primarily 16:9 resolutions back then, but it was at a time where we started changing from 16:10 to 16:9, and that's basically the resolutions that I'll be testing. All right, so 1080p, still everything on the highest setting here. All right, we're now at 1080p, and we are still getting 120 frames per second here, so a high refresh rate experience here in 2011. I think it's pretty good. You can see that the game stutters very, very little. It's a very, very smooth experience, this, and the let's look at the VRAM used, right? It's 260 megabytes of VRAM used, and it's true. I thought it might be a misreading, but I tested it on my more modern system, and the VRAM readings are pretty accurate. This is a 1.5 gigabyte GPU, VRAM GPU, right? It's not the 3 gig. I think you got a 3 gig and a 1.5 gig GTX 580. Now, the purpose of testing or using this system for the test is because I want to get as close to max as possible for the era. So that's why I do have a 990X CPU, and then I do have the GTX 580. I could not get a GTX 590. That would be top for this era. But I am looking at getting another GTX 580 so that we can do some SLI benchmarks as well. And I mean, not all games benefit from it, but there are quite a few. And we'll be having specifically a look at Batman Arkham City, or the Batman Arkham series, because they actually push the Nvidia technologies very heavily. Alright, so I just wanted this cutscene to load so that we can continue from here. But we getting a very, very good experience here. Very, very decent. And we are fully GPU bound here, 1080p. You can see the GPU usage sitting at 98%. So not CPU bound or anything like that. Alright, so I think last resolution I'm going to be testing is just the 2560 by 1440. Now the highest resolution back in this era was 2560 by 1600, I believe. So a 16 by 10, not 16 by 9. But seeing that I do not have a 16 by 10 display, and my custom bin file for my capture card doesn't seem to be liking that at all, so I'm just going to use a 16 by 9. Alright, here we go. I hope we continue from here. Alright, here we are at 1440p max settings. I don't know, are there any hidden settings? I don't think there's hidden settings. So hopefully we continue where we left off and we don't have to start from scratch again. We're going to have to start from scratch again. Alright, no problem. At least we get a decent comparison, right? Because it's the same area the whole time. Still above 60 frames per second here, and I don't think we'll drop below 60 frames per second at all. I mean, this is the resolution that I've been playing on for, as I said, I played about 4 or 5 hours or so, 4 hours, and like nowhere in the game did it drop below 60 frames per second at this resolution. So it's really a very, very good experience, and it is to be expected, right? It's a GTX 580, as I said. It was pretty high end at the time. It was also pretty expensive at the time. Today you can pick these up for like, I don't know, $25 or so. That's what I paid for mine, $25 US, and it's amazing what you can achieve with it if you are planning on playing all the games. Like here we have Space Marine, which still looks pretty decent, right? Sure, it does not have ray tracing and all the new DX12 features and whatnot, but it's still a decent looking game if you consider its age. It's almost 14 years old now, and playing at a very, very high frame rate, even at the max resolution of the time. Alright, I think that's going to be it for this one. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a few shortcuts on my desktop there for a couple of games. If there is something there that you saw that you liked, let me know which one you want to see tested next. I do have a list of about 30 games that I want to test on this specific system. It might not be this specific system all the time for the next 30 videos. I realize that'll be a bit boring, but what I'm going to be doing is I'll be I've got a second system fully ready to go. Third system is being built, so I'll switch between the 3 systems and then just test all the games from 2010, 2011, 2012, whatever, on period correct hardware, and trying to also keep the operating system period correct as well. It might not always be possible. I might need to use Windows 10 for some things, but I'm going to try and use the operating system that was the more popular one for the time. Alright, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and as always, we hope to see you in the next one.